I've never been the kind of guy to jump to conclusions or jump at shadows, but recently everything felt off with Sarah. We'd been together for about 5 years, married for 3. Honestly, I thought we were solid, or at least I did until the small things started piling up. She'd been more irritable than usual, snapping at me over nothing, canceling plans last minute, and her phone. Oh man, her phone was a whole other story. She'd hide it, keep it with her even in the bathroom, and the worst part, she'd get defensive and call me paranoid every time I asked to see it. That should have been my first red flag, but I guess I convinced myself she was just stressed or hiding something personal. I work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 at a construction firm. My schedule's pretty regular, and I spend my weekends trying to unwind. Sarah, on the other hand, works in marketing, which means her hours are unpredictable, often late nights or weekends. We didn't have many fights, but the tension was definitely there, simmering under the surface. I'd catch her lying about where she was, or she'd suddenly act cold and distant. I'd ask her about it and she'd brush me off, saying I was overthinking or that I was being paranoid. Still, I trusted her, or at least I thought I did. That's why I didn't push harder. I figured maybe she just needed space, or I was reading too much into things. Last week, I decided to check her phone, just a quick peek, something I'd never done before. I know it's wrong, but I couldn't shake that feeling that something was going on. I didn't find anything obvious at first, no messages or calls that screamed cheater. But then I noticed her texts with someone I didn't recognize. The messages weren't exactly explicit, but the tone was intimate enough to catch my attention. She'd be sending flirty little comments, laughing at stuff that wasn't funny, and calling this guy babe a few times. I couldn't believe it. My stomach dropped. How could she do that? How could my wife, the woman I trusted, be sneaking around like this? I decided I had to know more. I started digging into her social media, her messages, her emails, anything I could find. That's when I uncovered the worst of it. She'd been seeing this guy Marcus, a guy I once helped reintegrate into society after he got out of prison. Yeah, I genuinely tried to help him turn his life around. I thought I was doing something good. Turns out he was the one she was cheating with. I couldn't believe it. The betrayal was on a whole other level. Not only had she lied to me, but she'd also been sleeping with a guy I'd been trying to help. It felt like a punch in the gut, and I couldn't sleep for days afterward. The moment I saw her in the kitchen, acting like everything was normal, I felt like I was going to lose my mind. I kept replaying the evidence in my head, trying to understand how she could be so selfish, so manipulative. I wanted to confront her right then, but I needed a plan. I needed to catch her in the act, or at least get her to admit it. I didn't want to jump to conclusions and ruin everything, but at the same time, I couldn't keep pretending nothing was wrong. Everything was falling apart inside me, and I knew that this was just the beginning of a storm I wasn't prepared for. I knew I couldn't just blast her in the heat of the moment, not without proof, so I waited. I kept my eye on her every move, watching for any signs, any slip-up. It was torture. Every glance, every small interaction, I wondered if she was lying or hiding something. She was good at it, too. Always the bitchy smirk when I asked her where she'd been or what she was doing. She'd roll her eyes and throw some half-assed excuse about work or friends, never giving me a clear answer. But I started noticing little things that seemed out of place. She'd leave her phone around me more often, or she'd get defensive if I looked at her texts. One night, I came home early from work. It was strange because I usually stayed late on Fridays to get some extra hours in, but I just didn't feel right. When I pulled up in the driveway, I saw her car parked out front, but the garage door was slightly open. She wasn't the type to leave it that way unless she was in a rush or hiding something. Heart pounding, I slipped into the house quietly, trying not to make a sound. That's when I saw her. She was in the bedroom, half-dressed, on her phone. Her back was turned, but I could see her lips moving, and there was this text on the screen: "Can't wait to see you tonight." My blood ran cold. It was her, unmistakably. I froze, trying to process what I'd just seen. She turned around suddenly, caught me standing there, and her face twisted into this bitchy glare. She tried to lie her way out, saying she was talking to her sister, that she'd accidentally fallen asleep on her phone. Yeah, right, that was bullshit. I could see the guilt all over her face, even if she tried to hide it. I felt this rage build up, a mixture of heartbreak and fury. How could she betray me like this? After everything I'd done for her, after all the help I'd given her, I couldn't believe she was out there, sneaking around after promising to be faithful. I told her to sit down, to be honest with me. She started making excuses, saying it was just a friend, that I was overreacting, that she loved me but she was lonely or bored. I knew she was lying. I saw the babe texts, the flirty messages. She kept insisting it was nothing, that she didn't mean anything, that she was just messing around for fun, that she'd stop. But I knew better. I saw the way she looked at her phone, the way she tried to hide her responses, the way her voice cracked when I pressed her. That night, I felt like I was losing my mind. I'd given her a second chance after she screwed around before, and now she'd betrayed that again. I thought I trusted her, but now I didn't know what to believe. I was furious, heartbroken, and confused all at once. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with Marcus, the way she kept lying, the way she looked at her phone like she was hiding a secret. I kept asking myself how I missed these signs, how I didn't see it coming. Why did I let her get away with it for so long? I'd been so naive, so blind. Now I knew I had to decide what to do next. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. The adrenaline that kept me going through the night was gone, replaced by this heavy, sinking feeling of betrayal. I replayed everything I'd seen and heard, trying to piece it all together. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time I was prepared. I wanted her to admit it, to face the consequences of what she'd done. I also knew I couldn't just yell and storm out. If I was going to make her truly understand the depth of her betrayal, I had to be smart about it. I decided to set a trap. I knew she'd be working late again that evening, so I installed a small hidden camera in the living room, aimed at the doorway where I suspected she'd be when she got home. I didn't want to invade her privacy, just enough to catch her red-handed. I also made sure to turn on the security cameras outside, so I could see if she was sneaking around or meeting someone else. I wanted proof, real proof, that she was lying and cheating. That's what I needed to finally get closure. When she came home that evening, I was sitting on the couch, pretending to be engrossed in some TV show, even though my heart was pounding. As soon as she stepped inside, she looked around suspiciously, trying to act normal but failing miserably. I kept my eyes on her, watching for any sign of guilt or nervousness. She went to the kitchen, grabbed a drink, and then headed to the bedroom, where I knew she'd be trying to hide whatever she was doing. I pressed the record button on the hidden camera, and I kept the outside cameras rolling, just in case she made a move to leave or meet someone. About 10 minutes later, I saw her on the bedroom camera, reaching into her purse. I could see her fumbling around, acting nervous. Then suddenly she pulled out her phone and started typing frantically. That was my moment. I grabbed my phone and played back the footage. There she was. She was definitely exchanging messages with Marcus. I saw the babe texts, the flirty emojis, the "can't wait to see you tonight" message. Not only was she cheating, but she was actively planning to meet him again. My stomach twisted. That's when I knew I had everything I needed: proof. Enough to confront her once and for all. I waited until she came out of the bedroom, then confronted her in the living room. I laid it all out, showed her the footage, the messages, everything. She froze for a second, then started with her usual lies. "It's not what it looks like," she said, twisting her face into that irritating, bitchy expression she always used when she was caught. "You're making a big deal out of nothing. Marcus is just a friend, I swear. It's just sex. I didn't mean for it to get this serious." She looked me straight in the eyes like I was some fool for believing her. I felt my fists clench. I had tried to give her a second chance, and she'd betrayed me twice. Her words didn't matter anymore. The truth was out there in the footage, and I was furious. I couldn't believe she'd be so brazen, sneaking around, lying, manipulating. The worst part, I knew she didn't care about the damage she'd done. She just kept up the act, trying to make me doubt my own eyes. That's when it hit me. She didn't love me. She never did. She loved the thrill of the cheating, the power of lying, and probably the attention from Marcus. I was just some mug she could use, and I'd been blind to it all along. That confrontation was the turning point. I realized I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine, that I could handle the betrayal and move on. because deep down I was angry, humiliated, and broken. But I also knew I had to decide what to do next. I couldn't keep living in this illusion. Something had to give. Either I made her face her actions and try to work things out, or I cut her loose for good. Honestly, I was leaning toward the latter. I just didn't know if I had the strength to go through with it yet. All I knew was that this betrayal had changed everything, and I'd never trust her again. After I laid everything out on the table, the room felt colder than ever. Sarah's face twisted into this contemptuous sneer, her eyes narrowing as she tried to come up with some bullshit excuse. She looked at me like I was the biggest idiot alive, her tone dripping with that bitchy edge that she always used. When she felt cornered, "You're overreacting," she spat, crossing her arms. "Marcus is just a friend and you're being paranoid. I don't know what you're trying to prove, but I swear it's nothing serious. We didn't have sex, just some flirting, that's all." I looked at her furious, and honestly I felt disgusted. How could she lie so easily? How could she pretend that a few flirty messages were nothing? I'd seen the texts myself, the babe and the can't wait to see you stuff. It wasn't just innocent. She was cheating on me, plain and simple. And she was trying to gaslight me into doubting what I saw with my own eyes. I knew her well enough now to see through her act. She thought she could manipulate her way out of it, just like she always did when she wanted to twist the truth. I told her to get real and look at the footage again. I pressed play on my phone, showing her every message, every secret rendezvous she'd planned with Marcus. Her face turned red, then pale, as she realized I wasn't backing down. She tried to deny everything, but deep down I could tell. She was panicking. I felt this mixture of rage and sadness. I'd trusted her and she'd crushed that trust with her lies. Her bitchy attitude, that arrogant smirk she always threw around when she thought she was winning, it made me sick now. How could she not see what she was losing? She kept telling me she loved me, that she never wanted to hurt me, but her words sounded hollow. I knew she was only saying it because she wanted to avoid the consequences, to keep her comfortable little life. Meanwhile, I was sitting there feeling like a fool, someone who had tried to believe in the best, only to get stabbed in the back. It was like I'd been played for a sucker, and now I was left with this gut-wrenching sense of betrayal. I asked her why. Why Marcus? Why do this? And she just shrugged, looking annoyed and defensive. "Because I was bored," she said flatly. "It was just sex, and honestly, it's not like you're that exciting anymore. You're always working, always tired, never really paying attention to me. Marcus, he's different. He listens, he cares, and I was lonely. That's all it was." That lie. That crappy excuse made me almost laugh. So she's lonely, huh? Well, I was too. But instead of talking to me, she decided to cheat, lie, and manipulate her way through it. That's when I realized she never really loved me. She just loved the attention, the thrill of sneaking around. Deep down, I felt like my world was crumbling. The woman I married, the woman I thought I knew, was a liar and a cheat. I couldn't understand how she could be so cold, so callous. I'd given her a second chance and she'd spat in my face. The betrayal was so deep I felt like I was suffocating. Part of me wanted to just walk away, to cut my losses and forget her, but another part, the stubborn, naive part, wanted to believe she'd change, wanted to hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd see what she lost. But that hope was fading fast, and I knew I had to make a decision soon. I couldn't keep living in this nightmare, not when I'd been betrayed twice by the woman who once swore she loved me. After hours of arguing, I finally realized I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. The truth was staring me in the face. Sarah was a liar, a cheater, and she didn't really care about my feelings. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, and honestly furious. I needed to step back and think clearly, so I told her I was leaving for a bit to clear my head. She didn't put up much of a fight. Her bitchy attitude was replaced with a smug, knowing look, like she was already planning her next move. As I packed a bag that night, I couldn't help but think about everything we'd been through, all the memories, the promises she'd broken. I kept replaying the moments when I'd trusted her and how naive I'd been. I'd given her a second chance. What a mistake that was. She had betrayed me twice, and I'd almost convinced myself I could forgive her. But now I knew I couldn't. I had to get out before I lost what little respect I still had for myself. I didn't want to just walk away without a plan. I decided to talk to a lawyer the next day to understand my rights, and to figure out what I needed to do about the house, the finances, everything. I didn't want her to think she could manipulate her way back into my life or take advantage of me. I also reached out to a close friend, someone I trusted, and told him what was going on. Honestly, I needed someone to talk to, someone who could give me straight advice without sugarcoating it. That night, lying on the couch in an empty apartment I rented, I felt a mix of relief and despair. Relief that I finally saw her true colors and that I was finally taking control. But also despair because I'd lost the woman I loved, the woman I thought I'd spend my life with. I was angry at her, yes, but mostly I was hurt. How could she do this? How could someone so bitchy and manipulative pretend to care? The worst part was knowing she'd lie her way out of this, that she'd probably spin it all into some kind of sob story to turn people against me. But I also knew one thing: I was done. Done playing her game. I couldn't keep pretending. I'd let her betray me twice. That second chance she always talked about, yeah, that was gone. I'd made up my mind. I was going to get a divorce, cut all ties, and move on with my life. She could lie, manipulate, and act like the victim all she wanted, but I wasn't falling for it anymore. I'd been betrayed by someone I loved deeply, and honestly, that kind of hurt stays with you. But I also felt a strange sense of liberation, like I'd finally taken control of my own life after being blind for so long. It was going to be a long road ahead, but I knew I'd survive. I'd rebuild, learn from this mess, and maybe someday find someone who actually deserved my trust. But for now, the truth was clear. She was a liar, a cheat, and I deserved better. And I was done giving her another chance. In the days that followed, I focused on getting my life back on track. I moved out of the apartment we shared, leaving behind the memories and the betrayal that haunted me. The divorce process was messy and emotionally draining, but I was determined to see it through. Sarah's attempts to manipulate the situation, to spin her lies and make herself the victim, only fueled my resolve. I kept my distance, refused to get drawn into her drama, and stayed firm in my decision. Honestly, the hardest part was dealing with the aftermath. Friends and family took sides, some condemning her, others questioning my decisions. It was painful to see how quick people can turn against the one who's been hurt, but I knew I couldn't care less about their opinions. What mattered was what I wanted: peace, honesty, and moving forward without the weight of her lies dragging me down. I started therapy, not just to cope with the betrayal, but to rebuild my confidence and trust in myself. Looking back, I realize I learned a lot from all of this. Trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep. I was naive enough to think I had the perfect marriage, but I was blind to the signs of her manipulation and her true selfish nature. Now I see that sometimes people aren't who they seem to be, and second chances aren't always worth it. If someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. I also learned that revenge isn't about causing pain or getting even. It's about protecting yourself and reclaiming your life. I didn't set out to destroy her, but I did ensure she knew I wasn't going to be a doormat anymore. Moving on isn't easy and it hurts like hell, but I know now that I deserve someone who values honesty and loyalty. I've started dating again cautiously, and I've learned to trust again, slowly, and only when I'm sure it's genuine. Most importantly, I've come to accept that some people are just inherently selfish and manipulative. They'll lie, cheat, and betray without remorse. The key is recognizing that early, not letting them destroy your sense of self, and knowing when to walk away. That's what I did. I took control of my life, even after it was shattered, and I refused to let that experience define me. So if you're out there reading this and going through something similar, just remember, you're not alone. Trust your instincts, don't ignore the signs, and don't be afraid to walk away from someone who hurts you. It's not easy, but it's necessary. And in the end, you'll come out stronger on the other side. Wiser, more cautious, but also ready to love again, the right way this time.